I remember the exact night it happened. We were sitting on my balcony, the city lights flickering beneath us, like they were trying to warn me. Emily had been quiet all evening, sipping her wine slowly, her gaze heavy but distant. I asked if something was wrong, and after a long silence, she finally looked me dead in the eye and said the words that shattered me. Asterisk. I like you, just not enough to love you. Asterisk. At first, I thought she was joking. We had been dating for nearly a year, building what I thought was a strong bond. We traveled together, spent holidays with each other's families, even talked about moving in. But the way she said it calm, almost rehearsed, made me realize she had been holding this truth in for a while. I laughed nervously, trying to brush it off, but her face didn't change. My chest felt tight. It was like the floor had disappeared under me. I asked her why she stayed if she knew she didn't love me, and she said she times wanted to times love me, but the feeling never came. I couldn't believe it. All those late-night talks, all the plans we made, were they just placeholders for her until she found someone else? I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just sat there, frozen, while she finished her wine, like it was the most ordinary night in the world. The silence between us that night was heavier than anything I'd ever felt. I kept waiting for her to take it back, to say she was confused or scared, but she didn't. Instead, she stood up, walked to the railing, and started talking about how she didn't want to waste my time. I wanted to scream at her times. Wasn't this already wasting my time? Asterisk. But the words got stuck in my throat. She said she cared about me, that she admired me, that she thought I was a good man. But every sentence felt like salt in an open wound. I asked her if there was someone else. She shook her head quickly, almost offended I'd even asked. No, it's not that, she said. I just don't feel the way I should, not the way you deserve. That line cut me deeper than anything. Asterisk. Not the way you deserve. Asterisk. It was supposed to sound kind, but it only reminded me that the last year of my life had been built on something that was never real for her. I couldn't even look at her anymore. I just stared at my hands, wondering how many moments we shared that she already knew were empty for her. When she finally left that night, she kissed me on the cheek like we were strangers parting ways after a dinner party. The door closed, and all I could hear was the echo of her words repeating in my head. The next morning, I woke up half expecting her to text me, apologizing, saying she'd made a mistake. But my phone was silent. No good morning, no explanation, nothing. The weight in my chest was unbearable. I dragged myself out of bed and went through the motions, shower, coffee, work, but everything felt pointless. At lunch, I found myself scrolling back through our old messages. She used to send me paragraphs about how much she enjoyed our time together, about how she couldn't wait to see me. Now I wondered if she had just been trying to convince herself. That evening, I finally texted her. I didn't ask her to change her mind. I just asked if she had meant what she said. Her reply came fast. Asterisk. Yes, I'm sorry. I didn't want to hurt you, but I can't pretend anymore. Asterisk. Reading that, my hands started shaking. Pretend. That word burned. Pretend. Through our trips, our laughter, the way she held my hand when she was cold. All of it. For the first time, anger bubbled up inside me. I wasn't just sad. I felt cheated. I had given her everything, and she had given me, what? A fraction of herself, carefully packaged, so I wouldn't notice the truth. I put my phone down and sat there in the dark. The city outside kept moving, but my world had stopped. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face as she said those words. I replayed our memories in my head, like a movie I didn't want to watch, but couldn't turn off. The dinners, the road trips, the nights we stayed up until sunrise, how many of those moments had been hollow for her? By 3 a.m., I grabbed my keys and drove aimlessly through the city. I didn't know where I was going, but I needed to move. The streets were empty, the traffic lights changing for no one, and I felt like I finally understood what loneliness really meant. I ended up parking near the river where we once sat for hours, talking about our dreams. Back then, she told me she wanted a future with me, kids, a house, all of it. Now, I realized she might have just been painting a picture because it was easier than admitting she didn't feel anything real. Sitting there in the silence, I finally let myself cry, not just for losing her, but for losing the version of myself that believed in us so completely. By sunrise, I made a decision. I couldn't beg someone to love me, and as much as it broke me, I had to let her go before I lost myself completely. The following day, I packed up everything she had ever left at my place. Her sweater draped over my chair, her toothbrush, the book she never finished reading. Each item felt like a little betrayal, a reminder of how much space she had taken up in my life while keeping her heart somewhere else. I put it all into a box and set it by the door. My hands were trembling, but I knew I couldn't keep her ghost in my apartment anymore. When she came by to pick it up, she looked almost relieved. She smiled faintly, like she thought this was the mature way to end things. I didn't smile back. I couldn't. "Take care of yourself," she said softly, as if she were offering me some kind of gift. But to me, it felt like she was closing a book she never intended to finish reading. I didn't answer. I just nodded and shut the door behind her. The sound of the latch clicking felt final, but instead of peace, there was this heavy emptiness that filled the room. For the first time, I realized what hurt the most wasn't that she didn't love me. It was that she had let me believe she did. The days after she left felt like walking through fog. Everything was muted, food had no taste, music had no rhythm, and time seemed to stretch endlessly. I went to work, answered emails, even laughed at a coworker's joke. But inside, I was hollow. At night, I kept checking my phone out of habit. Part of me expected her to reach out, to say she'd made a mistake, to ask for another chance. But the screen stayed blank. She had closed the chapter, and I was the only one still stuck in the story. One evening, I scrolled through our old photos. There we were on the beach, covered in sand, smiling, like nothing could break us. There we were at her cousin's wedding, her hand resting lightly on my chest as if I belonged to her. I stared at those frozen moments and realized the truth. I had been in love with someone who only loved the times of us. It was a brutal realization, but it lit a small fire inside me. If she couldn't give me real love, then I had to give it to myself. So I put my phone down, deleted her number, and told myself this was the first step toward healing even if I didn't fully believe it yet. A week later, I forced myself to meet up with friends. They'd been checking in nonstop, worried because I'd gone so quiet. At first, I didn't want to go. I felt drained, like being around people would only make me more aware of the emptiness inside me. But when I finally sat at that table surrounded by laughter and stories, I realized how much I had isolated myself in her world. For months, everything had revolved around Emily. My schedule, my weekends, my plans, they had all been tailored to her. Without her, I felt lost. But sitting there with people who genuinely cared, I began to see glimpses of the life I had before her. My best friend Daniel leaned in and said, "Man, she didn't see your worth. That's on her, not you." I wanted to believe him. A part of me still questioned whether I had done something wrong, something that pushed her away. But deep down, I knew the truth. You can't make someone feel something they don't. That night, for the first time since it happened, I slept without waking up in the middle of the night. The ache was still there, but it was quieter, like a wound finally beginning to close. A few days later, I ran into her by accident. It was at a coffee shop we used to go to all the time. I walked in, and there she was, standing in line with her hair pulled back, laughing at something the barista said. For a second, my heart forgot everything, and just remembered what it felt like to love her. She noticed me and froze. There was this brief, awkward pause before she smiled politely, like I was some old acquaintance. Not a person she had once shared her secrets and dreams with, just someone she used to know. We exchanged a few words, meaningless ones about work and the weather, but I felt every second of it pressing down on me. When she grabbed her coffee and walked out, I realized something. I didn't feel anger anymore. I didn't even feel heartbreak. What I felt was distance. It hit me then that she was no longer the person I had been holding on to in my mind. She wasn't mine, and maybe she never really had been. As strange as it sounds, that small, awkward encounter gave me more closure than all the nights I had spent replaying her words. I finally understood it was time to stop grieving what never fully existed. After that encounter, something inside me shifted. I stopped checking her social media, stopped wondering if she was already with someone else, stopped torturing myself with questions I'd never get answers to. Instead, I started focusing on myself, I signed up for the gym again, not to distract myself, but because I wanted to feel strong in my own skin. I dusted off my old guitar and began playing in the evenings, letting the music fill the silence she left behind. For the first time in months, I wasn't waiting on a message, a call, or a sign from her. One night, as I sat on my balcony, the same place where she had broken me with that sentence, I looked out at the city and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. The hurt was still there, but it was softer, no longer sharp enough to cut me open every time I thought of her. I realized that heartbreak doesn't vanish all at once. It fades slowly, the way the night turns into morning. And while I wasn't fully healed yet, I could see the light breaking through. Weeks later, I found myself walking through the same park where Emily and I once spent lazy Sundays. The memory of her laughter was still there, but it didn't sting anymore. It just felt like a distant echo from another lifetime. I sat on a bench, watching kids chase each other, couples holding hands, and joggers passing by. For the first time, I didn't feel envy or longing. I just felt present. It struck me then that love isn't about someone else filling your life. It's about building a life so full and authentic that the right person naturally fits into it. Emily couldn't love me the way I needed, and that wasn't my fault. It was simply the truth. Her words had once broken me. Asterisk. I like you, just not enough to love you. Asterisk. But now, they no longer held power over me. If anything, they had freed me. Freed me to find the kind of love that wouldn't hesitate, wouldn't be half-hearted, and wouldn't need rehearsed excuses. I stood up from that bench with a strange calmness in my chest. I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. I was just ready. Ready for the next chapter, and ready to finally let her go. Not long after that day in the park, I began noticing how different life felt without the weight of her shadow. I started saying yes to things I would have once turned down: weekend trips with friends, late-night conversations that stretched until dawn, even trying new hobbies I'd always put off. One evening, while out with friends, someone asked me if I was seeing anyone. For the first time, I didn't feel a pang of sadness. I just smiled and said, "Not right now, and that's okay." It surprised me how true it felt. For so long, I had defined myself by being hers, by being in a relationship that wasn't real on her side. Now, I was finally learning what it meant to just be me, without needing validation from someone else. When I got home that night, I caught my reflection in the mirror. I looked tired but lighter, like I was finally carrying only my own weight, and not the burden of someone else's indifference. It wasn't the ending I had once imagined, but maybe it was the beginning I actually needed. Part of healing meant facing the silence I used to dread. Nights alone no longer felt like punishment. They became space to think, breathe, and rediscover myself. I started journaling, writing down every raw thought that used to keep me awake. Slowly, the words stopped being about her and began to be about me, my goals, my fears, my hopes. One night, flipping through those pages, I realized something powerful. I had been so desperate to be loved that I ignored the signs she was never fully with me. It wasn't just her choice. I had chosen to stay blind because I wanted the illusion of love more than the reality of being alone. That realization stung, but it also set me free. I wasn't just a victim of her honesty. I was finally accountable for the parts of myself that had settled for less. For the first time, I looked forward to the future without replaying the past. I didn't know what was waiting for me, but I knew I wouldn't accept halfway love again. With time, the fog lifted more and more. I began to notice the little joys again. The smell of fresh coffee in the morning, the sound of rain tapping against my window, the calmness of a late-night walk when the streets were quiet. These were things I had overlooked when my life revolved around someone who could never truly give herself to me. One evening, Daniel invited me to a small gathering at his place. Normally, I would have found an excuse to stay home, but I went. And there, surrounded by laughter and warmth, I felt something shift inside me. I wasn't searching for her face in the crowd anymore. I wasn't waiting for a ghost to reappear. At one point, someone new struck up a conversation with me. It wasn't romantic, not even close, but it felt refreshing, easy, natural, without the weight of expectation. And in that moment, I realized healing wasn't about replacing her. It was about rebuilding myself so that one day, when the right person did come along, I'd be ready. For the first time in a long time, I felt like the future wasn't something to fear. It was something to look forward to. A few months later, I stumbled across that old box of her things. The sweater, the book, the small trinkets she had left behind. I had shoved it into the back of my closet, too afraid to deal with it. But when I pulled it out this time, I didn't feel the same sharp sting I once did. I opened the box, held each item for a moment, and realized they no longer carried her weight. They were just objects, nothing more. The sweater smelled like dust now, not her perfume. The book was just pages of words, not a symbol of unfinished promises. I packed everything neatly into a bag and dropped it off at a donation center the next day. Walking out of there, I felt lighter, as if I had finally closed a door I had been standing in front of for far too long. That night, I sat on my balcony again, the same balcony where she had once shattered me. But this time, the air felt different. I wasn't haunted anymore. I wasn't broken. I was simply me, sitting under the same sky, finally free. Looking back now, I realize her words didn't destroy me. They revealed me. At first, they cut deep, leaving me raw and lost. But in the end, they forced me to face myself in a way I never had before. She looked me dead in the eye and said, asterisk, I like you, just not enough to love you, asterisk. For so long, those words echoed in my head like a curse. But now, they become something else entirely, a reminder that I deserve more than half-hearted love, more than someone trying to convince themselves I'm enough. The pain, the nights I couldn't sleep, the emptiness, all of it became part of a story that led me here. Stronger, wiser, whole. I don't hate her anymore. I don't even resent her. If anything, I thank her for being honest, even if it came too late. Because losing her taught me something far more important: how to find myself again. And maybe one day, when the right person looks me in the eye, I'll hear the words I always deserved. Not, I like you, but I love you, fully and without doubt. Months turned into nearly a year, and somewhere along the way, I stopped counting the days since she left. Life no longer revolved around her absence, it revolved around me. I had new routines, new people in my life, new goals that had nothing to do with proving my worth to someone else. One night, I found myself walking past the restaurant where we had our very first date. I paused outside, expecting that old familiar ache to hit me. But instead, I felt nothing. Just a quiet acknowledgement that it was part of my past, like an old photograph tucked away in a drawer. I realized then that healing isn't about erasing someone. It's about integrating the memory without letting it define you. She would always be a chapter in my story, but she wasn't the whole book. As I kept walking, I caught my reflection in a shop window. For the first time, I didn't see the broken version of myself staring back. I saw someone who had been through the fire and come out standing. Someone who finally believed that the love he was looking for wasn't behind him. It was still ahead. Not long after that night, I met someone new. It wasn't dramatic, not some movie-like encounter, it was simple. We struck up a conversation in line at a bookstore, laughing about how we both grabbed the last copy of the same novel. Her name was Claire, and there was something effortless about talking to her, something I hadn't felt in years. We exchanged numbers, and over the next few weeks, we got coffee, went on walks, and shared stories late into the night. It was easy, natural, and most importantly, it was real. I never felt like I had to chase her emotions or wonder if she was pretending. She showed up, fully present, and I found myself doing the same. One evening, as we sat together watching the sunset, I realized I wasn't comparing her to Emily anymore. Claire wasn't a replacement. She wasn't a distraction. She was just herself. And with her, I could finally be myself, too. For the first time since those devastating words, asterisk, I like you, just not enough to love you, asterisk, I felt hope again. Not just hope for love, but hope for a future built on honesty, trust, and the kind of connection I once thought I'd never find. Looking back now, I see the entire journey differently. That night on the balcony, when she told me she liked me but didn't love me, felt like the end of my world. But in truth, it was only the end of a chapter I was never meant to stay in. The heartbreak forced me to confront myself, my fears, my need for validation, the way I had accepted less than I deserved. It broke me, yes, but it also rebuilt me. Slowly, piece by piece. I learned to stand on my own, to value my own worth, and to stop begging for scraps of affection. Meeting Claire wasn't the grand finale. It was proof that the universe had more in store for me than heartbreak. She didn't heal me. I healed myself. But she became the beautiful reminder that when you finally stop clinging to the wrong person, you make space for the right one to arrive. Her words once haunted me. Asterisk. I like you, just not enough to love you. Asterisk. Now, they no longer echo in pain. They've transformed into a lesson I'll carry with me forever. That real love isn't hesitant, it isn't half-formed, and it doesn't leave you questioning your worth. And as I sit here writing this, I realize the story was never about losing her. It was about finding me.